Hello and welcome to my channel. Vice Rhino here. Today I'm looking at a video from Real Truth Real Quick, in which they give the biblical view on dinosaurs. It's always quite striking how the scientific view is simply, here's the evidence and the conclusion it points to, while the apologetics view is always, this is how you must interpret the evidence based on our predetermined conclusions. Fun times.
Welcome to Real Truth Real Quick. My name is Rick Smith. I'm here with my friend Todd Wagner.
Hey, what's up, Rick?
All right. Well, I got another good question for you today, and you got 5 minutes, so here we go. What is the biblical view on dinosaurs?
See? That's what I'm talking about. In my last video, we discussed truth and how you can determine truth. Reality is the best measuring stick for determining truth, because reality is real regardless of our perceptions of it. If the Bible and the biblical view are true, then using reality as the measuring stick is still the best measuring stick, because reality will match up with the Bible and the biblical worldview. So if the Bible were actually really true, there would be no need for a biblical view on certain topics. The biblical view would just be the view that matches best with reality.
Well,
Are they in the Bible?
yeah,
I mean,
listen, let's go back. This is really interesting because dinosaurs, what are they? We didn't even know they were around until 1841.
1841 is when Richard Owen first laid eyes on what he would later dub a dinosaur fossil in 1842, so you're kinda right. But scientists had been describing dinosaur fossils all the way back to the 1600s. They just didn't know they were dinosaurs, and there was even some debate as to whether or not fossils even were the remains of dead organisms. Mollusk fossils were sometimes believed to have been traces of elaborate urine streams. The first fossil discovery that we now recognize as having belonged to a dinosaur was described by Robert Plot in 1677. It was a thigh bone, which he speculated belonged to a 9-foot-tall human, explaining that surely Goliath was at least 9 feet tall, so this could be one of the Nephilim. He was wrong, of course. We have since determined that this was a dinosaur fossil, but my point is that these fossils have been known about for at least a couple hundred years longer than you were suggesting. And that's just in Europe. It's entirely possible that other civilizations found similar fossils, but we just don't have their records for those finds. Also, fun fact, Linnaeus revolutionized the field of taxonomy and basically invented the naming convention that we still use today in the 1700s. Because of the time frame, taxonomists consider 1758 to be the first year where taxonomic names should be considered valid, so anything named on or after January 1st of 1758 is considered a valid name. The first ever named organism that is considered valid is the Scrotum humanum, based on this fossil. But alas, being a valid name doesn't mean the name sticks. It is now more properly known as the Megalosaurus.
When I think Sir Alfred Owen coined the name Dinosaurus from the Greek, which means terrible lizard.
It was Richard Owen, not Alfred Owen. You might be getting your important 19th century biologists mixed up. The famous Alfred would be Alfred Russel Wallace, pioneer of biogeography and independent discoverer of evolution. Also, just to be pedantic, it was terrible reptile, not terrible lizard. Lizard is a subcategory of reptile. All lizards are reptiles, but not all reptiles are lizards, and dinosaurs do not fit into the same category as lizards.
That's all it is. It's just a big lizard. That's what a dinosaur is. And my Bible says that God created all animals on what, the 5th day?
And yet, we have a very detailed timeline of how long ago dinosaurs lived, and this was constructed with the help of geology and the fact that not only do human remains never appear in the same strata as the dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs themselves are limited to certain strata depending on what kind of dinosaur it is. Most of the iconic dinosaurs are from the Cretaceous period, and I can guarantee you that if you find an Ankylosaurus fossil, you will not find a Dilophosaurus fossil in the same strata, because they lived in different time periods. But yeah, they were all created together on day 5, with humans arriving just 24 hours later.
And so there we go. I think the Bible does talk about the fact that there were creatures that existed. Most dinosaurs, most of these things were not that big. The ones that were big are the ones that get all the attention.
This is true. Most dinosaurs were fairly small. But they were a very diverse group that included a lot of different organisms, including modern birds. There are only a handful of bird species that get even close to sizes that we would consider to be dinosaur-sized. I'm not sure what the relevance of their size is to the fact that they did not coexist with humans, though.
What a lot of people don't know, Rick, is that we don't find very much of the remains of these animals. In fact, I would say, I remember reading that as much as maybe 20% was the most we ever found of one of these skeletal structures.
Well, the most complete T-Rex fossil is a Rex named Sue, where they have about 66% of her bones making up about 90% of her bone mass, meaning that most of the missing bones are the little bitty ones that probably got crushed and destroyed over time. But yeah, of the thousands of dinosaur fossils found, even when we don't find complete skeletons, we can use multiple bones from different skeletons to fill out the picture. Not really sure what you're getting at here. Are you trying to argue that dinosaurs didn't exist because we don't have 100% complete skeletons?
You find a leg bone, you find a few fragments of hip bone, and then some vertebrae, and we all of a sudden construct this massive animal.
You can learn a lot from a leg, a hip, and a few vertebrae. For one, you can get a good feel for its size, as a small animal will not have giant legs and vertebrae.
And we put big sharp teeth in it, and all of a sudden, because it's big sharp teeth, we think they were carnivores.
Teeth are actually some of the most common fossils of dinosaurs because teeth are very dense, so can survive longer than other parts of the body, such as the skulls, which are made of very many different fragile parts. Skull finds are some of the most rare finds there are. But yeah, we can tell from the teeth what kind of food they ate. And they weren't all carnivores. Quite a few were herbivores. And it's not just about how sharp the teeth were. We can also examine the wear patterns of the teeth to determine what kind of diets they had. One thing is certain, though. Pointy, sharp teeth are not good at chewing plant matter, and flat, dull teeth are not good at ripping flesh from bones. I can't imagine the type of teeth found in Tyrannosaurus rex being comfortably used for chewing plants. They do look very well adapted to puncturing and tearing flesh, though. Hell, by examining the teeth, scientists have been able to tell that dinosaurs constantly grew and replaced their teeth throughout their lifetime, and can even tell the difference between a tooth that has been lost while the animal was alive and one that was separated from the skull after death, and even whether or not the tooth had erupted from the dinosaur's gum line. Oh yeah, and we also find teeth occasionally embedded in the fossilized remains of the dinosaur's prey, so its teeth were lodged in the flesh of another animal because it was a plant eater, right?
Which, if you go back and read Genesis 1, in fact, we did a Real Truth Real Quick on Are We All Supposed to Be Vegetarians based on Genesis chapter 1. And we talk about dinosaurs briefly there.
Only religion could make otherwise rational people think that a dinosaur's diet is somehow relevant to what our diet is supposed to be.
And I don't think those dinosaurs were carnivores.
Yeah, their teeth just got lodged in the other dinosaur's flesh because they were roughhousing or something. Right.
Okay. Now, that gets to the question, what happened to dinosaurs? And by the way, were dinosaurs on the ark?
This is actually one area where evolution could help you guys out a bit. Because the Bible explicitly mentions birds being on the ark, so yes, dinosaurs were on the ark. Except in my experience, creationists are entirely unwilling to agree that birds are dinosaurs, so they usually come back with a resounding, no, they couldn't be dinosaurs because evolution is a lie. So now you're stuck having to fit not only the ancestors of all modern species on the ark, but a bunch of extinct species as well. It has been calculated by Answers in Genesis that a worst-case scenario would have about 7,000 individual animals on the ark, representing about 3,500 different species. That calculation is mostly concerned with how many created kinds there were, and how far they could accept evolution before agreeing that, they accept evolution, and trying to get the number of species down as small as possible. So they were only really looking at extant species. But 99.9% of all species have gone extinct, so if we're worried about fitting dinosaurs on the ark, then we would need to worry about representing all the other extinct species as well. Like, I get why creationists have to account for dinosaurs. They're big and cool and exciting, and everybody knows about them, and the Bible clearly talks about every animal being represented on the ark, so they have to be accounted for somehow. But, couldn't you just claim that they went extinct before the flood? I mean, I guess you can't because they were so well represented in the stratigraphic column in segments that creationists have decided were deposited by the flood, so they still have to be alive during the flood, and so they had to be on the ark. But what about all the other extinct animals from that time?
I think so. I think they were two every animal.
Yeah.
That would certainly seem to be every part of every animal.
Well, then Noah's Ark must have been a TARDIS.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
Well, if Noah was a Time Lord, that at least explains how he could have lived so long.
If they existed and God told every animal to be there, you would say yes.
Otherwise, we've got some serious other problems.
Yeah.
Yep, animals from all over the planet just started walking to the Middle East. The sloths had no trouble getting there from South America, kangaroos were fine hopping from Australia, pandas didn't mind going without their beloved bamboo to get there from Asia, koalas gave up eucalyptus for the duration. Like, seriously, there's so many animals with diets so specialized that they can't live outside their natural ecosystem without extreme care. Did the koalas just, like, make little baggies for themselves in which they kept at least a year's supply of eucalyptus leaves perfectly preserved so that they wouldn't spoil?
And so, hey, listen, I'm not a genius, but if I was told, to put certain kind of animals on the ark, whether it be an elephant, okay, or a dinosaur, I wouldn't put a fully mature adult on there. Okay? And if God brought the animals to the ark, I'm not sure he sent the largest, what we would know today as African elephant in the world.
There are so many problems with the Ark story that have nothing to do with how much space was on the Ark. I mean, there are certainly problems with the space that these animals would have had, but that's just the beginning of the troubles. There's inadequate ventilation. There's inadequate staff to care for all the animals. There's inadequate supplies for the animals that have very specific dietary requirements. There's the fact that wooden ships warp and bend, and the bigger you make them, the worse this problem becomes, and so a wooden ship the size of the Ark would not be seaworthy. There's the fact that there is zero genetic evidence of a bottleneck event for most species within the last 4,000 years. There's the latent heat of vaporization problem that would have boiled them all alive. If you're the type of creationist who thinks the continents moved from Pangaea to where they are today during the flood, then there's the problem that the amount of energy required to make that move would have released enough heat to boil them alive. And there's the fact that the tiny number of represented created kinds would need super speed hyperevolution to get to the diversity of species that we see today. Such fantastically fast evolution would make Stephen Jay Gould look like a gradualist. I find it amusing that one of the reasons creationists deny evolution is because they look at this story and they want to take it literally. But taking it literally would require that either the Ark was a TARDIS in order to fit all the animals in, or that evolution happens at a much larger scale and a much faster rate than any scientist has ever proposed.
And I would bring a small elephant. I'm not a genius.
I'd bring a baby.
Okay? I'd bring a baby dinosaur.
Baby koala or adult koala, you still need a year's supply of eucalyptus leaves. And that's just for the boat ride. They would still need a several more years' supply for not only their trip to the Middle East to get on the boat in the first place, but also the several years after the flood where there would be no eucalyptus plants mature enough for them to eat. That's also assuming that the Earth isn't just completely salted and infertile after being flooded with salt water. And repeat this problem for every animal with a strict diet. There are snakes that only eat eggs. There are birds that only eat snails. Not only that, but one specific kind of snail. Did all these animals bring a several years' supply of their preferred foods for the journey?
So what's really interesting, I'll tell you though, where they go. Okay, well, after the flood, a lot changed about the Earth.
Yeah, it would now be salted and infertile, and all the land plants would be dead. And yet somehow an olive tree survived and was producing leaves immediately after the flood.
Including as the water began to recede, initially there wasn't much land. Okay, I think you could say, I don't know what percentage. At first it was just mountain peaks that were around. So a lot of the world was covered still in water. Limited food supply, destruction of a lot of habitat. And then also in Genesis 9:3, we see that God says, now you can start to eat meat.
So now that eating one of anything will cause that entire species to go extinct, you may start eating those things. God's not very good at the whole planning thing, is he?
And so I imagine that if you're looking for a food supply, you kill the largest food supply that you can kill.
So let me get this straight. Noah took dinosaurs on the Ark, but he only took the little ones because space on the Ark was at a premium. So when the journey was over, there was no food, but now he's allowed to eat meat. So he eats the largest animals, which were the dinosaurs, which you just spent the first half of your video talking about how small they could be and how he would have taken the babies to save space. Is that about right? Or are you saying that he somehow packed up enough calorie-dense food on the Ark to have the dinosaurs grow to full size before he ate them? In which case, wouldn't it be more efficient just to eat the food yourself? Okay, maybe not. Maybe they ate things that humans can't eat. After all, cows eat grass and get pretty big, but humans can't survive on grass. Okay, fair. But if you want these dinosaurs to be carnivores at this point, do you know how much meat it would take to rear a juvenile to a large adult form? But you said earlier that they were herbivores. Well, the large herbivores didn't get large by eating small amounts of plants. If you want them to have enough food to grow from a baby to a full-size large dinosaur, you need more room on the Ark.
And who knows if you wouldn't kill some for fun.
The entire Earth just flooded, killing everything on it, and now leaving us with a scarcity of food. I'm bored. Let's waste some food by killing it when it's not needed. Dude, You're speculating here. None of what you are saying right now can be found in the Bible. When engaging in blatant speculation, you don't have to make Noah look like a complete buffoon.
Okay, right? I'd shoot the biggest one. Let's just say a lot of dinosaurs did survive and didn't get extinct because of a lack of food supply or loss of habitat. But it does make sense that the largest animals that need the most food would die first.
Yeah, that does make sense. But after a global flood like that, all of the other animals would be hot on their tails in the race to die off. Because all animal life, carnivore and herbivore alike, rely on plants for their energy source. The carnivores eat the herbivores eat the plants. There are no plants for the herbivores, plants take longer to grow from scratch than the herbivores can survive without them, especially considering the now salted earth, so the herbivores die. No more herbivores for the carnivores to eat, carnivores die. Not to mention the fact that Noah just worked his ass off trying to preserve these animals, and now if a single animal dies, that entire species is wiped from existence. And yet, somehow, through all of this, we see something like 4 new species evolving every day in order to get from the 3,500 species on the Ark, according to AIG, to the approximately 5.775 million terrestrial species today.
It also makes sense that if they're going to be hunters, they're going to kill the biggest animals first.
Yeah.
Okay, so what really is interesting, there was a recent discovery, I think 2004, 2005, in Patagonia, Argentina. I love the name of this dinosaur. And what's so unique about this dinosaur, it's called Dreadnoughtus, which means fear not. Why do they call it that?
It doesn't so much mean fear not as fears nothing. This is possibly the largest land animal to have ever existed, so they named it Dreadnoughtus because there's nothing for it to fear.
Well, first of all, it was an amazing discovery because they found over 70% of this animal.
Yeah? Did they? Because I seem to recall being told that the most complete dinosaur skeleton ever found was something like 20%.
I would say, I remember reading that as much as maybe 20% was the most we ever found of one of these skeletal structures.
You know, it'd be nice if you could at least go for one video without contradicting yourself. I mean, I can tell you're kind of talking off the cuff, and I get it. That's when I make the majority of my mistakes. Go through my channel and you'll find several examples of me having a pinned comment with a correction in it. Most of those were necessary because I veered away from my script and started talking off the cuff, and then I turned out to be wrong. So I get it, but this is clearly a prepared video. The question wasn't a surprise. You could have written yourself an outline of what you were going to talk about rather than just repeatedly saying things like, "I seem to recall." Just do some Googling before you record, then you don't need to seem to recall. You will actually have the right numbers.
From the head down, which, again, if I told you, most dinosaur remains, I think that to that point, the largest they had found, maybe of a T-Rex, was like 20-some-odd%.
See, and there you can see him remember what he said earlier, so he's trying to backpedal it. But firstly, he's wrong. We found 66% of the skeleton representing 90% of the bone mass of the most complete T-Rex. And second, he was clearly talking about dinosaurs in general, not T-Rexes specifically, when he mentioned 20% the first time. Now, I'm skipping a bit where he rambles on a bit about how big and heavy it was. Like, yeah, I get it. It was big and heavy. What's your point?
All this is amazing, and it's pretty interesting. What's even more amazing is what paleontologists say was the cause of the death of this Dreadnoughtus.
Let me guess. It was a flood. Was that it?
They say it was, number one, it was a herbivore. It wasn't a carnivore.
The cause of death was it being a herbivore?
Number two, it died, as massive as it was, because of a raging torrent or flood.
Sure, floods happen, and they kill things when they happen. Except here's the thing. It wasn't necessarily killed in the flood that buried it. In fact, I'm not seeing anything even speculating at the cause of death for the 2 main Dreadnoughtus specimens. In fact, one article on it describes there being evidence of theropod scavengers picking at the bones before they were buried by a flood. If they died in the flood that buried them, that really wouldn't have happened.
And they found it in like quicksand or a sandy area, and it was largely preserved. That's what they found. That fits with the biblical record.
It fits with the biblical record that scavenger theropods would have been picking at the bodies of animals that died in a flood that would have killed them off too? How does that fit with the record? Or is this another instance of a creationist cherry-picking, where you guys only look at the data that appears to agree with the conclusion that you want to draw, and you ignore everything else?
So when you think dinosaurs, you can think Bible. You don't have to think millions of years. Okay? You just have to go, they're there, God created them, we don't need to fear them. I think maybe you'll see them in heaven, and because of all creation will be restored.
All dinos go to heaven? Okay. All right, I know he was probably talking about heaven just being essentially Eden recreated, with creation being the way it was supposed to be in the first place, which brings up a lot of issues, but here's my question here. Do the animals that existed on Earth go to heaven when they die, or does God make new ones from scratch in heaven? Because generally I'm under the impression that Christians don't believe that animals go to heaven because they don't have souls or something, so God just makes new ones for our entertainment, I guess. Seems kind of wasteful, and I know a lot of pet owners who wouldn't be happy about their pets not getting to enjoy the same eternal benefits as them.
But they won't eat you.
Yeah, they won't eat you.
Yeah, they'll use their pointy, sharp teeth that are great at ripping flesh apart for, what, crunching watermelons?
You know, it's funny, you made the comment about we've only found 20%. I remember at one point, I didn't know that.
And now you do know that. So now you will also be mistaken when bringing it up yourself, because it's just not true.
And we were at a museum, I think it was in New York, and I told my wife, man, how do they find this huge dinosaur in the sand? She's like, Rick, you know there's only like 4 of those bones are from that dinosaur, and they made all the rest. I'm like, no way. So I'm Googling it on my phone, and you're right. You go to the museum, that's not what they found in the sand.
You're making it sound like they just made it up out of whole cloth. The skeletons that you see in museums are usually casts of actual fossils rather than being the fossils themselves. This does not mean that those bones do not exist. And yes, they use data from multiple skeletons to construct the whole skeletons that they put on display. But I fail to see the point that you're trying to make here. Like, you guys clearly accept the fact that dinosaurs existed, you don't seem to have a problem with that, yet you spent a good chunk of your time in this video acting as though dinosaurs are made up. What's your angle here? Are people supposed to come out of this thinking that most dinosaurs never existed?
They find a skull and build a whole civilization. They clay out the face and they, listen, believe in dinosaurs. That doesn't mean you have to believe in millions of years.
Was that supposed to be a coherent thought? They build a whole civilization out of a dinosaur skull, therefore you can believe in dinosaurs but not millions of years? I assume that the civilization you're talking about is the ecology of the dinosaurs, where they discuss the environment and behaviors of the dinosaurs? Because that information comes from a lot more than just skulls. We have fossilized nests, eggs, footprints, droppings, damage from fights with other dinosaurs, and more. You can tell a lot about a creature if you get to examine its nests, droppings, footprints, and bones. And yes, one of the things you can study is what they ate.
Okay? I am a young Earth guy. That's another real truth real quick. I'm not saying it's just a few thousand, but I think it's closer to a few thousand than it is millions of years.
And you are objectively and factually wrong.
Dinosaurs and evolution don't go together.
They really do, though. We can watch them develop from archosaurs in the Triassic and increase in diversity through the Jurassic and into the Cretaceous, and then suddenly disappear at the end of the Cretaceous some 66 million years ago, at the same time as there is a whole heap and heck of a pile of evidence of an asteroid impact, which left a layer of extraterrestrial iridium in the stratigraphic columns all over the globe, and which caused massive devastation that we have a very detailed record of in the fossils. There are fossil fish with debris from the impact lodged in their gills, meaning that those fish were alive during the impact and died as a direct result of it. We even have amber from the time of the impact with impact material lodged in it. And this is actually another example of science making testable predictions. Scientists have known for a while that the KT layer represents a mass extinction event, but up until 1980, the accepted cause of the extinction was an increase in volcanic activity. In 1980, Walter and Luis Alvarez first published their hypotheses that the global layer of iridium was caused by an asteroid impact, and that this impact was the main cause for the extinction event. It wasn't until 1991 that the Chicxulub crater was discovered, and it was just the right age to be the impact that caused the KT layer. And here's the thing. When an event is large enough to have a global impact, pun intended, it leaves a global marker in the stratigraphic column. Assuming that the worldwide flood is responsible for all the different strata throughout the Earth, then the prediction is that all of the layers will be identical no matter where you look, because they were all caused by one global event. But that just isn't the case. So young Earth creationism makes a prediction, and it's not even close to being true. And, in fact, creationists like to pretend that this is actually a prediction made by the evolutionist worldview, that there should be a universal geologic column, and they then point to the lack of a universal geologic column as if that proves geology wrong, when a universal geologic column is what would be expected of their own model.
Dinosaurs in the biblical record do.
Dinosaurs and the biblical record do go together, even though all the scientific predictions made by young Earth creationism, including the ones about dinosaurs, do not hold up to scrutiny.
All right, well, be sure to check out Real Truth real quick. In the show notes, we're going to put lots of great resources for you if you want to continue to dig in, no pun intended.
Don't be a weakling. Always intend your puns. Now, in Friday's video, I had mentioned that I had never seen a creationist video that provides information on the scientific sources they use for their conclusions, and now these guys are saying there are all kinds of resources in the show notes, so let's take a look, shall we? I wouldn't want to be wrong about something like that. Okay, so here's the video description on YouTube. Looks like they haven't even bothered to write a description. Okay, well, they plugged their website too, so maybe if I find this video on their website, there will be links there. Oh look, I found it on their website, and there are some links. Wow! Okay, what are these links to? Well, 4 out of 5 of them are about carbon dating, and the 5th is about a tourist attraction removing an erroneous sign. In other words, not a single link about anything that was discussed in the video, just unrelated links to other creationist stuff, 2 of which actually result in page not found errors. One is just a copy of an email where one of the guys from this video answered, and the other 2 are 2 creationist apologetics articles, one of which looks like it was written by someone who knows next to nothing about carbon dating, though she does provide a nifty little guide to what carbon dates actually mean. If it's dated to 30,000 years, that means it's actually 7,000 years old. If it's dated to 7,000 years old, it's probably closer to 5,000 years, and so on. And in case you were wondering, no, she doesn't explain how she got these numbers. The final piece is an article by Walter Veith, which is written in a much more sciencey sounding manner, but which makes a bunch of mistakes about how all of this works. Hey, he even references the volcanic eruptions and potassium argon dating that I've been talking a lot about recently. Of course, without mentioning anything about the inclusions. He also talks about carbon dating a lava flow, which is not how anyone should be dating lava flows. Anyone who suggests such a dating method for a lava flow is demonstrating that they have no idea how carbon dating works. So I guess my point about creationists making it difficult to thoroughly fact-check them still stands. That's it for this one. Today's comment of the day comes to us from Jack Vos, who says, I keep noticing the same mistake over and over in your videos. There is a part of science that is purely faith-based, and currently nobody can prove me wrong. Dark matter! There is no physical evidence for dark matter, yet we are expected to have faith that it's actually there. So in conclusion, please either present solid evidence of dark matter, or stop using science doesn't use faith shtick. Okay, couple things here. Firstly, this marks the first time I have ever talked about dark matter in one of my videos. Well, I have mentioned the YouTuber DarkMatter2525 a few times, but this is my first mention of the substance known to astronomers as dark matter. Secondly, you want physical evidence for dark matter? It's called gravity. The galaxies that we observe behave in a way that suggests that we can't see some 85% of the mass of the galaxy. This either means that there is some kind of matter that doesn't interact with observable EM radiation, or that our theory of gravity is wrong. And yeah, sure, it is possible that the theory of gravity needs a revamping. It's less understood than the theory of evolution, after all. It's quite possible that some new discovery will cause us to reevaluate it, and occasionally such things have been proposed, but it is much more likely that there's just something there that we can't see. Not being able to directly see it doesn't mean that there's no evidence for it, it just means that we haven't seen it with our eyes. If you want more information, if you simply Google dark matter and go to the Wikipedia page for it, there are 11 sections on the observable evidence for dark matter. Galaxy rotation curves, gravitational lensing, cosmic microwave background radiation, redshift space distortions, and more. I'd recommend giving that a quick glance before asserting that there's no evidence for it in the future. Thirdly, yes, I know that the mistake that he's claiming I've made is not about the dark matter itself, but is that I say science doesn't use faith. I don't often state plainly that science doesn't use faith, so let me just get that out here. Science does not use faith. At least not good science. Sometimes there is speculation, yes, but these speculations are put to the test by making predictions. If my speculation is correct, then X should happen when I do Y. Maybe Y is something that cannot yet be done. That doesn't make it faith-based, that just means that the speculation will likely not become part of the scientific consensus until we develop the technology to do Y in order to test it. Thanks for watching. Special thanks as always to my patrons, especially Mark McManus, who are the plant matter that allows the dinosaur that is my channel to grow to dreadnoughtus proportions. If you'd like me to eat you, you can support the channel for as little as $1 per week over at patreon.com/ViceRhino. Other ways to support the channel, such as direct donation or my Amazon wishlist, are linked in the description, as well as my social media accounts and my P.O. Box address. One last note before I go, I am taking this week off, but I still have videos done for it, so you won't notice a difference, but because I did them in advance, the patron credits are a little bit out of date. So if you're a new patron as of May 21st or later, you likely won't see your name in the credits until my video for June 5th. See you next time.